Thank you for tuning in to Spiritual Debriefing from First Baptist Church, Hiwassee, a podcast about Christian men living a Christian life in a very unchristian world. With your hosts, Daniel Meadows, Derek Fisher, Randy Bryson, Jed Harris, and me, Ray Taggart.
Welcome to Spiritual Debriefing. I am your host, Brother Daniel Meadows, youth pastor at First Baptist Hiwassee, men's ministry director. With me, as always, is...
That's me. I'm Randy. I'm back and enjoying every bit of it. You're up next.
I'm Jed, and I'm back here too.
Well, I'm Derek.
Hi, Derek.
Hey.
And then you got me, Ray, over here, and I'll do the obligatory, if you like what you're hearing, please like, subscribe, share the podcast with your friends and family, those you think could hear the words, because we just need to get it out there, get more people to hear the good news, and share this around. So let's get this underway.
Good job, Ray.
Thanks, Ray. Glad y'all are here with us. This past weekend, last weekend, a few of us had the opportunity to go down to Hot Springs, Arkansas for a one-day mission trip called Acts 1-8 Mission Trip. It's something that's put on by the Arkansas Baptist State Convention. So we're just going to kind of spend some time talking about that and the experience, kind of what y'all did. Would you do it again?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, we're already planning.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Yeah, we're going.
Yeah. We'll start with Randy on that one.
yeah, Randy, go ahead. What'd you do?
Well, this is my second time to go this time, and we did the yard work part of this mission trip, where we go out and mow yards, weed eat, clean up people's yards that need help with that. And it's quite a blessing to see appreciative people come out and talk with you and really enjoy, the fellowship that they see. For one, a bunch of people come out and help them, and then we sit and talk with them about their about God and how we do mission work for Him through this Acts 1-8. And basically, first year we had quite a bit of yards to do. We ended up 8 or 10 yards. This year we did 4, but they were needing pretty good cleanup on these yards. So it took us a little longer on this one here, but it's quite an experience. I think next year I'd like to try something different. I don't know. Derek, you sound like you had some fun on your side, so I may try that.
Yeah, the cowboy ministry was awesome. Yeah, but I was going to let Jed go next.
Well, both of y'all seem like you had some fun over
We
there.
did, because we did it together.
We did it together.
Did you hold hands too?
No.
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 That was a hesitation.
It came close because we had to open the gate together.
Yeah,
so our hands did get closed.
Get closed.
We had to open and close the gate.
They held reins together.
But we had Autumn usually in between us too. So
Yeah.
because Autumn went with us,
Yeah.
and she got to participate.
Dead gum her.
She made the video of what Acts 1-8 did. She was in the video of it.
Oh, was she?
Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
We pointed it out to the church, and so they were all like, "We didn't see her," and I was like, "Well, get ice."
Yeah. Yeah. No, she had a great time.
Yeah,
So, what did you do on the cowboy ministry?
well, we went down to the stadium. We caught a ride with Shane. He's the youth pastor there at Crossbar C. Isn't that right? Crossbar C, Cowboy Church, Benton, Arkansas. He took me and Derek and Chris and Autumn out, and that was kind of fun. The ride out was.
Yeah, it was fun.
But yeah, we got out there, and they didn't have anything for us to do, but we offered several times, and the registration was already going, and crowd wasn't as big as what they was hoping, but told Autumn to go get a horse, borrow a horse. They was having a 3x4 rodeo is what they call it.
Mm-hmm.
which I am very unfamiliar with.
Yeah, I mean they had the goat tie-in, run barrels, flags,
poles.
and then steer or
Breakaway roping.
Mm-hmm.
And then they had a roping clinic and a horsemanship clinic. And, of course, we had a little message there from Shane and Greg, the pastor at the church.
Yep.
He done a devotion right there in the middle of the roping clinic. And just a really good time. And I got to checking on their Facebook page the other night after we got home. 4 saved.
Mm-hmm.
From
Yep.
right there.
That was great.
And they was concerned that, what was there? There was 12 kids probably, 8 horses, lots of adults.
Mm-hmm.
They was kind of concerned that it wasn't a great big deal, but it's like me and Derek said, it's just one.
Just one.
If we get one, we
That's
won.
it, man.
Yep.
That's it.
So 4 is a pretty good little blessing out of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
That's about it right there.
Yeah.
So I was just going to add, along with my team, we had, our team, sorry, had my wife and my 2 daughters and my father-in-law on our team. And they also was in there. And I believe you guys' families were doing different things as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Crystal and Wyatt did the fishing club, the fishing derby.
The
They did
fishing derby, and then Lisa
Went down on the medical, and they had a dental clinic and done a little bit of medical stuff too, but mainly dental is what they post on.
Yeah. And then Colby and Mike did what, like a sports
Sports
clinic
deal
or
is a
something
baseball,
like that?
baseball clinic
All
with
right.
some college kids.
Yeah.
Colby
go.
wanted to go to IHOP with them that night. Lisa said no.
Of course he did. Colby made new friends. He makes friends everywhere he goes. though.
Everywhere he goes.
I like baseball. Let's go to IHOP.
Right. He made that connection. So
And then when you set the stage for this Acts 1:8, so this is my first time going, and like you said, you go down to the high school stadium.
Mm-hmm.
There was about 1,400 people there.
oh yeah, it's everyone
mean,
across the state.
Yeah, I mean
Churches
it's
from all over.
huge.
It's huge.
And it's churches, it's collegiate ministries. So when I was in college, I was doing it through the Baptist Collegiate Ministry, going to the Acts 1:8 mission days. And so, I mean, you have everyone from kids up to
Senior adults.
senior adults
Oh, yeah.
going to do stuff, and so.
Yep. And so I mean that was awesome just to show up to that. You're
Oh,
like,
yeah.
oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And then like the cowboy ministry, I enjoyed it a lot. And then so everyone that looked like they were in charge of the cowboy ministry. So Shane, Pastor Greg, and then I forget the other guy's name that came from
Russellville,
from Russellville.
Church in the Dirt.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember that. His last name's Ham.
Okay.
Yep.
And then he gave his testimony too.
Yes, he
You
did.
know, he's a preacher at a cowboy church down there, and so each kind of like event or each clinic, each one of them kind of gave their testimony, and I mean it was cool.
And
And so-
Greg's wife give the 3 circles.
Yep.
And
She
you
gave-
took a picture of that.
I've got that actually.
Yep. So she
Leave
she
it
did the
like
3
that.
circles, and the ministry on that. But what kind of the other blessing that blessed us so much was seeing all these kids come together, enjoying the rodeo. And there was kids there that's never rode before ever, or there was one particular boy there that rode like 3 times, and he's a natural. I mean.
He got the belt buckle.
He won the
roped
belt
it.
buckle.
He roped the calf. He done everything. He actually scored well enough being
To
on
win
a
a
horse
buckle.
3 times.
Wow.
And they
Yeah.
had beautiful buckles down there too.
Wow.
They were beautiful. And so he was able to win that. And so for me and the family, we were able to go to their church Sunday morning down there. And so when Pastor Greg was mentioning the people that were saved during that event, 3 out of the 4 were there at church.
We're at church. That's great.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yep. And I will throw that out there. So if you're ever in Benton, Arkansas, and you want to go to that cowboy church, it was great. I mean,
What's the name of that one again?
the Crossbar C Cowboy Church in Benton.
Crossbar C Cowboy Church.
Yeah, Crossbar C Cowboy Church.
It's just barely off of I-30, just like a half mile.
Yeah,
Okay.
and they just built that arena. So they have an arena right next to their church. They just a covered arena that got, what was it, 2 months ago?
I think that's what he
I
said.
think they said about 2
Yeah.
months ago.
That's awesome.
And they got 50 acres there, and they are planning on doing like a Wrangler camp, a Wrangler ministry there. I mean, they are on the verge of just
Exploding, man.
exploding.
That ministry, that cowboy ministry, man, that's a ministry that reaches people that most would never think of, right? I mean, in ways that most would never even attempt to do.
Could you explain a little bit what that means? Because there might be people listening that have no idea what that means.
Like, right, are you talking about like cowboy ministry or okay? So, cowboy churches, there's, all of us kind of belong to different types of cultures. You got the law enforcement culture, you got the mechanic culture, you got the cowboy culture, way of life. You got the hunting and fishing culture per se within our whole society, right? And so, I grew up with horses and in that kind of cowboy way of life my whole life, and so it's just a way that you come. Cowboy churches are a lot of you come as you are. Pastors are there in boots and blue jeans.
So is the pastor on a horse when he's preaching then? I'm just kidding.
Well, sometimes they are actually, right? Sometimes they are. So, they'll preach in their cowboy hats, or I mean, it's very just relaxed almost. You feel comfortable being there as somebody that came from a cowboy way of life. And so, like, yeah, some of them have arenas, some of them don't. Some of them just do trail rides after church. Some of them have arenas that they do play days and full-blown rodeos in. And it's just a way to reach that type of people. I know several of them that'll go to local rodeos and share the gospel at the rodeos. And
Shane does that too. He's
he
mentioned that
does
before.
And when you're somebody who rodeos and cowboys, you're not going to listen to somebody in a suit tell you about Jesus. But if you have somebody approach you in boots and blue jeans and a cowboy hat, you're more willing to listen to them because they speak your language.
And I think Shane's ministry too, wasn't it? Bucking for Christ.
Bucking for Christ, I think is what it was.
Bucking for Christ ministry, and he does that too. That's why he goes out to rodeos and does that as well.
Well, you said that different type of people and stuff in the rodeo. I grew up in the rodeo deal. Dad roped when he was young, and we raised bulls. We went to OJRA rodeos, high school rodeos. We was stock contractors. You got, a lot of people sit back and look at cowboys and say, that's a rough crowd.
They're rough and gruff.
Well, you got your rough crowd, but you got the true blue Christians. I mean, the best people in the world. You can't distinguish them no more than you can distinguish us sitting at this table. No. But it's just one of those things. But
I mean,
it's just a different type of ministry.
It is. It is. And it's cool because I've been able to use my horse and that kind of stuff for sharing the gospel.
Yep, and that's what Autumn wants to do too. She wants to do the cowboy ministry.
I was about to say we've talked a couple of times about that. So it's just it's a neat ministry to be a part of and to see grow the way it has over the last several years.
But yeah, I mean, back to the Acts 1:8, it's just that was awesome. I mean, I had a great time, and that's what's cool about that too. You get to see and meet different people from the state, know, and see what they're doing for their ministry, and seeing how God's moving and how God is working across the whole state of Arkansas.
Yeah.
And so that was awesome to see that too as well. I mean, I think I don't know the numbers, so I won't say them because I don't know them. But I know it was like in the hundreds of being saved, wasn't it?
Something like that.
Yeah.
I'd have to go look at the.
But I don't know the exact ones. But just like that, it was a blessing to me.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to do it again next year. And
October 7th.
Yeah.
Do you know if they do that is it just an Arkansas thing, or is that a national thing? Do you know? 'Cause
I don't know.
Okay, because I know that they also mentioned they're doing the local version is in April. So I'm just mentioning this because in case anybody's listening and you're somewhere else, I mean, look it up. Maybe they do it in your town.
Yeah, I don't know.
But also, I know Mike was talking about how he wanted to try to get the April one going here, where we are, and do our own little local version of Acts 1:8 and invite people out here. So
Yeah, that'd be
keep
great.
an eye on that too. Maybe we'll post something about that when it's coming up for
Yep.
anybody listening who wants to see what it's about. They can
Yeah.
come out and visit us.
Yeah, I don't know if they do anything national, but I mean, even if they don't, the cool thing for Acts 1:8 for me when I was in college was I was like, man, this doesn't just have to be that once a year we all converge there, right? Mm-hmm. For me in college, it was, okay, I'm going to take what I did there and I'm going to bring it back home.
Mm-hmm.
Is that how you felt?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's exactly how I
Because
felt.
that was my next question to y'all was...
He wants an arena now.
Yeah.
All right. Well, my next question is going to be, how are you going to take what you did there and what you learned there and bring it back to where we are here?
I want an arena.
He's already looking to rent, build, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, or another thing that I looked at that way too was how other church kind of got together,
Yeah.
and I think that's what maybe we should do here locally, is that we should get together as churches, as one, and do these ministries and do events and do stuff like that, because that's what I took away from that, was that you got to see all these different churches come together as one.
With the same goal in mind.
With the same
same
goal.
goal.
That's it.
And that's what I've noticed too. Sometimes we're like, okay, we're in our little bubble.
Right.
Right. We're in our bubble of Northwest Arkansas, and who knows what anybody else is doing.
Right.
And it's like there's so many of Southern Baptist churches across the state, and we're one people.
Right.
I mean, in God's word, we're one church, even though we're many little churches. We're one big church because we're God's children.
Right.
So
That's what I want to do. I kind of want to get together and see if we can get other churches involved.
Well, we had the privilege of meeting, and I didn't catch his name, but the head of the Cowboy Church, to put them all together, and he's over all of them. And he was telling us, he said, the Cowboy Church is the fastest growing church in the state and probably most of the nation.
it is.
But he said, for sure here in the state. And he said, he was giving us examples, and there was one church, he said, they started meeting, it was about 4 or 5, and they outgrew their little house. They didn't have no land. They had $3,000 in their account. Somebody said, there's 25 acres. It's $10,000 an acre. Oh, we don't have that. Buy it. It was paid for. Gone.
Yeah, right.
Just like that. Then they went and somebody, Walmart or somebody who worked at Walmart, come and donated their money for the slab. He said, the Cowboy churches are on fire.
just- yeah,
And the
it's
money's
going.
going to them. God's blessing them, and they're getting built, and they don't have a lot of debt to them.
I watched one start up at a church camp in South Arkansas. Now they've got their own building and a covered arena and barn and all that. They do, they do the Wrangler camps and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
I think it's a cool ministry.
And
I
it's
really
awesome.
do.
Well, what I was going to say with that is, like, Greg went down the road and picked up a girl that never been there yet, but she just moved in or something and wanted a place to ride her horse, and well, there she was. She done well. I guarantee she's probably going back. Mm-hmm. So you've opened the door. You've got somebody in there. You can minister to them. Yeah. Sometimes it's just getting them in the door.
And the thing too is, I know we're pushing Cowboy Church.
Well, yeah, and that's what I was gonna get
we're
back on
talking
the other
about that.
track,
Yeah, because the thing is too, though, is there's a lot of ministry opportunities that we can do.
Correct.
Right,
Mm-hmm.
just like mowing lawns. I mean, that's something we do anyways as a men's group, is doing lawn work on our Saturday breakfast days that we do, and then we go out and do lawn work. So, but there's different opportunities that we can do as churches or as individuals to share the gospel. It doesn't just have to be that one.
No. And that's what we do too as well. I mean, like you said, Saturday mornings, what do we do?
Right.
Yard work.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to start doing different things. We're just
Yeah.
brainstorming right now
Right.
what we need to do, and most of us come back excited and let's do stuff.
I used to rent out when I was in South Arkansas. I would call up some of the local catfish farmers, and I would rent out one of their ponds and just take students there and fish and share the gospel while we were fishing. You know, I mean,
That
there's
works.
stuff like that all over the place that you can do individually.
Right. And we're doing that. We're getting more involved in the community.
We are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'll add one more ministry that I thought was pretty cool down there was not only was they stocking up for their local food pantries, they were actually stocking up to send food and different items down to the hurricane victims as well. So I thought that was pretty cool that they stepped in and added that too at the last second, of course. I mean, because that tragedy was going on whenever we're there, still going on. But it was pretty nice that they added that to their ministry as well. So,
Anything else from Acts 1:8?
if you get the opportunity, go on down there and try it. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, one last thing, I did hear a little story from Mike about when he went and joined up with you guys at the yard work. He said one of the houses you went to, nobody was answering the door, and there was like, you know, dog barking inside, and neighbors were saying, I think they don't live there anymore, and so it was a very, very interesting situation that sounds like you guys ran into there at that
Yeah,
house.
that was our last house we went to, and Mike called in to have a welfare check, and I don't know what the final decision was on that, but yeah, that yard was needed to be cleaned up quite a bit. Nobody's been there for a while, so yeah, that was interesting. Yeah.
Anything else on that? No?
I don't think so. No,
All right.
I don't think so. I just wanted to share our experience with that.
Yeah.
You know, that's what I think. That's as I told you guys. I just wanted to share that.
Love it. Love it. So there's one member of our podcast crew that you hear from every so often on a podcast, and so we kind of want you to hear from him tonight. Kind of his story. I would say it's an interesting story. I've heard bits and pieces of it, and so I'm excited to hear the whole part of it. So Ray, just kind of take as long as you need to, man.
All right, I definitely will. Yeah, I know I've told you guys some here and there, but I don't think we have time for all of it, so I'll try to keep it to the important bits. Because I was actually talking with Derek the other night, and we kind of were going through how we've definitely been, well, I guess could sum it up in one of my favorite quotes is actually that not all who wander are lost, because I've tried a dozen different things, and I've said it on another podcast. I enjoyed all of them, but none of them I found like a good home in yet. And but anyway, so I've done a few different things. So some of you may have already known or heard that we recently moved here to Arkansas from Hawaii, and that's actually where we got saved, was out in Hawaii. Now I grew up in a Lutheran church, and was sprinkled and confirmed and all that, and I've always actually believed in God. I just drifted away pretty hard as a young man. I actually had my father has had multiple sclerosis, and so he was diagnosed when I was real young, and he had a progressive version of it. And so by the time I was a teenager, he was bedridden, couldn't do anything for himself. And our family was supporting him. The government helps out, Social Security, all that. He was able to work for quite some time, but by the time I think it was my senior year, he had to stop working and driving and couldn't do any of that. And the state would give you a nurse for 40 hours a week. That helps, but if you do the math, there's a lot more than 40 hours in the week. So we made up the rest of it, and I'd say unfortunately, but that's not the right word for it. What it caused me to see at that time was that life was real fleeting, and I kind of drifted away from doing the things I should have done. Really, I mean, I was a straight A student. I was on a roll up until middle of high school, and then I was one of those kids. I didn't have to do anything my senior year. I could have graduated. I could have gone to college a year early if I wanted, but I didn't. Instead, I had late arrival, so I skipped first period. I had early release, so I didn't have a last period. I had all 3 lunches during the day, and then I took pottery, choir, and I think I had to take government, and that was like the only 3 classes I had to take, and that's all it did. So I started slacking off pretty hard, but I had gotten into my head that I just should enjoy every day for what it was. And, grades slipped, still got into college, did really well on my tests and all that. But, we fell into this really weird situation where I had to pay for a decent amount of my college because they actually counted in the assistance that my dad was getting as income. So, one parent working, the other parent, yeah, he's getting all kinds of assistance from the government, but it doesn't cover all the bills. Medicines and all that stuff are incredibly expensive. So I was trying to work full time to pay my room and board and food, and like the classes were covered, nothing else was. And of course, I made the decision to go to a college that was, an hour plus away from my house. So I was living down on campus and joined a fraternity, and I didn't even mean to join a fraternity. I knew a guy who was there. I was just hanging out with them all the time. Just a pretty good group of guys, but it was definitely a misfit fraternity. Like, we were the smallest fraternity on campus. The house that they lived in got condemned right as I was joining, so we got kicked out of that house and got stuck in a different one. And the University of Minnesota actually manages the houses, so it was actually, it wasn't necessarily the fraternity's fault, but we barely filled half the rooms in the place, right? There were rooms where literally the power didn't work, so nobody lived in that room because it was like, yeah, the electrical's bad back here, so nobody lives back here. So it was that kind of place. And so we moved into this, we got put into a different old frat house that nobody had been in for a while, and found some real weird stuff in that place. There was like a coffin up in the attic, and who knows what they did with that thing. I don't know. Yeah. If anybody's had Greek life out there, it's only half of what the movies show it, but about half of it's right. But it was just partying, drinking. I wasn't even 21, and definitely, doing drugs and just really, living it up. And so did not. By the time I got to my second year of college, I'd already owed the university, like in I think they wanted $2 or $3 grand before I could even start the next year. And I was like, I don't got it. My parents don't got it. I don't got it. I tried to get some more loans. They wouldn't give it to me. And they were like, well, if you can get it by, halfway through first semester, we'll let you keep going. And I just knew it wasn't happening. So I just drifted away and moved on. And was like, all right, college is not for me right now. And I was going for, computer engineering and electrical engineering because I've always been a nerd. And, but it was like, I got sucked in by the flesh, by the, sin. I was just basically a couple other guys who I met in college. We went and rented a place and started just, I was working as delivering pizzas actually at the time and working, probably 50 hours a week delivering pizzas all night, and then we'd get home, and I worked with 2 other guys. One guy worked at a bar, and another guy worked at late night shift at a bank, actually working customer service stuff for them. So we'd all get home from 11 p.m. to 2 p.m. or 2 a.m., and then we'd party till the sun came up every single night. Like, it was, by the time I was done living with them, I was a borderline alcoholic. We'd each come home with either a bottle or a case of beer, and by the morning they were all gone. Right? There'd be 3 bottles or 3 cases of beer, and they were gone. And at the same time too, we were, I shied away from the hard drugs. I've never really enjoyed those too much, but definitely I smoked a lot of weed back in the day, so that's just how it was. And one of my roommates was actually from a town in Minnesota where there's a lot of wealthy kids, and I think this is actually how it happens for a lot of people. I actually slipped into we literally became drug dealers for a while. That's what we did because we couldn't afford to smoke good weed, so the only way to afford it is to sell it. And he knew all these rich kids, so it was real easy. They wanted it, we could find it. It slipped right into it. And next thing you know, that was like 5 years of my life, just delivering pizzas and selling weed. That's all I did. And at the time, it seemed like, I would say now, at the time, I would say I was having fun. But looking back on it now, it's just all wasted time, just all wasted. And I kept telling myself, and I've talked about this a little bit with some of you, my dad was getting sicker and sicker at the time, and my mom couldn't take care of him anymore by herself. And so she had to move him to a assisted living home, you know. So he went to a group home. It wasn't like one of those big places. It was more one of those like a single house where they have, you know, like 4 or 5 bedrooms with just a few guys. All of them had MS, and they'd have some nurses there 24/7 take care of him. And you know, I went and visited him, you know, every couple of weeks and stuff. And every time I'd go down and visit with him, he'd constantly be talking about how, you know, I want you, you know, you need to buy a house, and you can use me to help get the loans, and I want to move in with you, and I don't want to live in this house anymore. And I just wouldn't hear it because I kept thinking it was selfish. I was being super selfish. I was like, I don't want to, you know, you've seen it in movies, you've seen it maybe in other people you know, when you take on that it's a burden, but it doesn't mean it's a bad thing. But when you take on that burden of taking care of an ailing family member, that's your life. Like, you don't, you know, my mom couldn't even leave to go to a movie, because if she left the house for 2 hours and he couldn't go to the bathroom by himself, right? He couldn't, if anything happened, what was he going to do? I mean, he had life alert and all that. Yeah, there's that, but it doesn't cover you, right? It doesn't protect you. So, I mean, my mom, she's a saint. She never left. She did as long as she could. And then he actually fell and tore up her knee, and that's when he had to get to the assisted living home, because she had needed to do knee surgery and couldn't barely walk anymore. And so she's like, I can't lift him, I can't move him, I can't do nothing. And I kept saying to myself, again, I'm not gonna give up my life to do that. I'm just not. I didn't think that was fair to me, but in hindsight, I wasn't being fair to him, and I really wish I would have, because it was. You know, when he passed away, it was definitely a change in my life. I mean, I had already started to straighten up a bit. I had moved away from the guys because I'd realized, you know, one of my roommates, he was definitely an alcoholic. I'm not going to mention any names, but you know, I picked him up from jail a couple of times for DUIs. He lost his car one night because he couldn't remember where, but it stopped working, and he walked home. And he gets home, sun's barely up, and he's soaking wet, head to toe, drunk as a skunk. He's like, we gotta get my car, I don't know where it is. And turned out he had driven like a mile past our place, crashed into something, then walked like 3 miles the wrong direction and looped back around. He didn't find his car for 2 months, until finally a tow truck company or somebody called him and said, yeah, we've had this car here and it's under your grandma's name, so we couldn't find you, and we finally figured it out, so he got his car back. But anyway, there was definitely an interesting story about with the final nail in the coffin, though, is a night where he called us up. Me and my other roommate were sitting there, and he calls us up, and it's probably 3 a.m. We're hanging out, and he's like, hey, you got to come get me. I crashed my car again, and it won't work. We're like, oh, man. So we go driving. Actually, he was over at the Mall of America. So we drive over to the Mall of America. And I don't know if any of you have ever been there, but
I've been there.
yeah. So yeah,
It's huge.
It's huge. So those big parking garages on the outsides, right?
Yeah.
And they have the way you get into them is the outer edge of the parking garage is a huge ramp that goes up, and then there's turn-ins to the different parts. Well, he thought he was on an upper level, so he went to go turn out onto that ramp, but he was on the main level. So when he turned out, he was under the ramp and just crashed right into a concrete wall, put the top of his head through his windshield. There was like a perfect dome in the windshield. So we get him, and there's icicles of blood coming down off his beard, and you know, he's got a big old gash in his forehead, and we're like, you need stitches, blah, blah. He's like, just take me home, I'll be fine. So we take him home. He cleans up, he seems fine, you know, we're, you know, chatting, laughing, he's drinking another beer. And he's like, all right, I'm gonna go to bed. And we're like, okay. And my other roommate goes to bed, and I'm just sitting there with one of the guys who hung out all the time with us, and you know, I was like, man, what a night. And I think we rolled up another joint and smoked one. It's like, you know, 4 a.m. now, and all of a sudden there's a knock on the door. And I go to the door, and there's a police officer there. And he's like, hey, is so-and-so home? I'm like, yeah, let me go get him. And I turn around, and I shut the door, and he just comes right on in the house. I'm like, what is happening right now? Luckily, he lived right at the bottom floor, because at the time we were still, like, there was definitely weed in the house. There was mushrooms in the house. Who knows what else might have been in the house. Like, I was like, oh man, we in trouble now. Luckily, he was the first bedroom you come to. I open the door, and I'm trying to get my roommate to wake up and talk to this police officer, and he's literally like, no, I'm not getting up. I'm like, you gotta talk to him, man. Like, don't do this, man. And the police officer finally goes into his room, and he doesn't even have a light that works in his room. So the cop's sitting there like with a flashlight, and I'm just sweating bullets because I know that there's all kinds of paraphernalia and junk just sitting on the table and the lid. You know, I mean, we just smoked. I'm like, what the heck is going on right now? And luckily for me, my dog threw up on the police officer's shoe right at that moment. I don't know why he threw up on the shoe. I don't know, but just puked all over this cop's shoe. And the cop's like, could you help me out with this? I'm like, yeah. So I go back into the kitchen, and the other dude who was sitting there with me, he is just petrified on the couch, not moving a muscle, just staring at the TV like nothing's happening. I'm like, dude, hide stuff. What are you doing? He's like, I'm so scared. So anyway, don't want to make this story take too long. So we hide everything. We don't actually get in any trouble at all because we were able to hide it all. The cop comes out. He's telling us you can't take people away from the scene of a crime, all this. My roommate didn't even get in trouble for it because they never caught him there, right? They couldn't prove nothing. But that was the wake-up call for me. That really was, that I needed to get out of that lifestyle. Like, I was like, this is not it. And so shortly after that, I moved out from them, got a better job, started, bought a house, started trying to clean up my life a little bit. I never got rid of the weed, though, unfortunately. That took me a lot longer to do. But wasn't going to church, and I believed I had made a new God for myself, right? I believed in God, but I thought God was, the New Age God. I really fell into the New Age pretty heavy. I was tarot cards and going to music festivals with a bunch of hippies and love and peace and all this. And yeah, there's a greater universal force and all that. And it was shortly after that my dad passed away, but I think it was partially because he saw that I'd straightened my life out. He knew what was going on. And both my brother and I were going through tough phases at that point. And it was right after he actually came and visited me at my house for Christmas and saw that I had my own place and that I had a good job finally, and I wasn't, I had a decent career going. I was actually working for a moving company and doing sales for them and was making pretty good money. And he'd even said, he's like, I'm glad to see you finally got things straightened out. And it was that January that he passed away. It was literally like 3 weeks later. So, and again, this is the one regret I do have. I wish I would have figured it out sooner and had lived with him until that point, because I didn't meet my wife until like a year after he passed. I kept thinking my life is going to be ruined if I take care of him. And it actually didn't even start till after that anyway. So that's a regret I have, but I hope that he is saved. He was saved at one point, and he never said he stopped believing in God. He did say he was pretty mad at God. I mean, because of his illness and everything. He always used to say, I'm just angry at God. And I don't think, there's nothing in the Bible says you can't be angry at God. You don't want to curse him, but he was angry with the situation he was in. So anyway, I met my wife, and we got married, and we were both very New Age. I mean, we were doing ayahuasca ceremonies, peyote ceremonies, doing all that stuff. And we decided to move out to Hawaii for her health, because she started having some illness issues right after our daughter was born. And we were like, you know what, we'll move to Hawaii, we'll get a farm, we'll grow our own food, because we're like, it's all chemicals, it's all this bad mojo going on in the mainland, we're going to get out to where it's nice and clean, and Hawaii's, blessings and blah, blah, blah. And so we moved out to Hawaii thinking it was going to be this. And Hawaii's a beautiful place, don't get me wrong, but if you don't have a lot of money, you live like you are poor out there. And we lived in a shack, beautiful ocean views, lots of mosquitoes, lots of mold and mildew. And I think at this point, I was working real hard. I took over managing a farm out there. I had some experience growing some things. I'll leave it at that. And hydroponically. And so I went into growing hydroponic tomatoes. And actually did really well at that, but it took a lot of work. It was a ton of work. So I wasn't seeing my family a lot, and things got real spiritually dark. Me and my wife were fighting all the time. She was constantly, felt like she was, we had one car. I would take it to work. She'd be stuck at home for 12 hours a day in this crappy shack with my daughter with no internet. Her phone barely worked because you're living in Hawaii. You don't always have cell service, and where we lived, if she wanted to talk on the phone, she had to go literally walk 200 yards and stand on top of a hill, and then she could call somebody. But then you're standing outside the whole time trying to talk to somebody. So, and I didn't hear it because I'm the man. I'm providing. I'm working. I'm building this farm. The owner of this farm is talking about if I can help rebuild it up, because he was trying to be done with it, and if I could, he was going to let me take the whole thing over, and I kept thinking, there's a room for, we can maybe build a little house out here, or some of this stuff. We thought all this stuff was going to work out, but we just kept fighting. We almost got divorced at one point. I did switch to doing coffee farming after about a year because I couldn't make enough money doing the farming because of what the owner wanted. He was taking too much. I couldn't sustain myself. So I was like, I can't do this. So I went over and got a job at a big coffee farm, and it was just as many hours, more money, which was nice, and free cone of coffee. So that was really nice. You count that in, I was actually making really good money. But it was still, I'd be working till 1 a.m. sometimes processing coffee. You know, during coffee season, which is half the year, you process coffee every single night, and you don't process coffee till they're done picking it, and that's when the sun goes down. I mean, because they get paid by the pound, so they don't stop till it's done. I mean, this is all migrant workers who come in from other parts. A few locals pick coffee, but not as many, and they're just not as reliable as, you know. I mean, you get these crews of guys coming from. We used a huge crew from the Dominican Republic, and great guys, nice guys. They partied a lot too. I was done drinking at this point. I had stopped smoking at this point, but I was still just working my butt off, and my family was falling apart. And my wife actually kicked me out for about a week. And I was actually crashing at the coffee farm for a little bit, crashing in the barn for a little while before the owner of the farm said, "Hey, I got a room. You can come stay down at my place for a little bit." So I spent a weekend there, and I'd be driving down and picking up my daughter and hanging out with her for a few hours when I could. But I mean, I was only seeing her for a few hours a week because I was working so darn much. And I kept wondering. I was like, you know, why can't I manifest something better? Why can't I, you know, I've got all these positive visions. I'm always a very positive guy, and yet all these negative things keep happening. That's what the New Age always tells you. You can manifest it, right? If it's not happening, it's because you got something in your head that's doubting and blah, blah, all this craziness about how if your life's going bad, what they're really saying is, it's your fault. And they are right about that, I'll tell you that. It's your fault. It's because you can't vision your future. So it was actually my wife who said, she's like, okay, you know, I don't want to ruin our family. She's like, but something has to change. It's not working. You're not hearing me. You're paying for everything, but you're not supporting me at all. She's like, what's the point of having a husband if you're not here? If you leave before I wake up and you come home and you're so tired that if you sit down, you pass out in a second. And it's like, and you got nothing left for me. What's the point? And she said, we need to go to church. She goes, I don't know what it is. The Lord spoke to her and said, we need to go to church. And I was like, you know, whatever. I'm willing to try anything at this point. And all I said was, maybe just not a Catholic church, because she was raised Catholic. I said, let's maybe try something other than a Catholic church. And she's like, that's fine. Especially we had, our daughter was, I think, 3 at the time, 4 maybe. And she's like, yeah, that Catholic church is not for little kids anyway. And so she found what seemed to be a nice church. We checked out a couple, but she found one that great welcoming people. You know, they read their Bible. We got Bibles again. We started reading them. We got in a Bible class, and I don't know what it was where it clicked. It was right after one of those Bible classes where, I mean, I was kind of like, yeah, I believe in God, and the Bible's always a pretty good book. You know, there's good stuff in there. It's a great story. But then when I actually started reading it, I realized, I was like, I don't know if I've ever actually read it. Like, I've read verses, I've read chapters, I've read little parts, but if you actually read it, and the second, you know, all of a sudden you're like, wait, was that always in there? Was that always in there? And then I had a good, like, it was like our second or third Bible class where the guy who was teaching it was like, it's so simple. It is so simple. All you got to do is accept Jesus. All you got to do is understand that Jesus is your Savior, that He died for you, and that He was raised again. And as long as you accept that, you are saved. And I was like, how come nobody ever told me that before? Like, why didn't anybody ever tell me that? And they probably did. I just didn't hear it. You know, my ears were closed. My heart was hardened. But at that point, I was at my lowest point I'd ever been, you know. I mean, you could probably see pictures from me of that point. I was just, I did not look well even, because we just could barely afford to eat enough, you know. I mean, like, we could, but it was all, you know, we couldn't afford a lot of meat. We couldn't afford a lot of protein. We were eating all just beans and vegetables, which you will survive on that. You definitely can, and nothing against that type of diet. But just, I don't know, it was like overnight. It was the next day, and I just felt different. And I grabbed, the next time I was at church, I grabbed a little booklet and a little, it's kind of like one of those tracts people hand out, but a little bit bigger than that. It's called It Is Finished. And it's one of those things you read through it, and it kind of explains. I think it takes you kind of on the Romans road, and then ends with the prayer to accept Jesus. And that was a life-changing moment right there. Reading that little book I just devoured it in like an hour. And at the end of that, I was like, every day since I have said, it was like, Jesus, you need to save me. You need to help me, because I have done so many things wrong. I have broken almost every commandment that you have given, and there's nothing else that can save me but you. And from that moment, it has gotten better and better and better. It really has. They even at work, I had actually tried to quit before we got saved. I went to him and said, I got to quit. I was like, I can't do this. I'm working too much. It's ruining my family. You're not paying me enough. And they're like, no, we'll do this, we'll do that. It'll be a little better. We'll give you a little more money. And they gave me a little more money. And they said, we'll hire some more people soon. Nothing happened. After I got saved, and I went to him again, and I said, listen, work is like fourth on the list. There's like God, family, church, then work. And right now you guys are sitting here at first spot. I was like, that's not gonna work anymore. We're done with this. I got to do something different. I was like, no more. I'm not processing coffee anymore. You've got workers to do that. You don't have your manager do that type of stuff. I mean, I was the farm manager, and I was fixing all the cars, fixing the trucks, fixing all the equipment, taking crews out into the field to do the spraying, to do the fertilizing, to do, ordering all the material, doing coffee tours for all the tourists, selling coffee clubs, taking the kids out on adventures because we had a work stay program. We had a bunch of youth who'd come up and stay on the farm, and 20-something-year-olds and plus. So they'd do work for us, work like 20 hours a week so they could stay on the farm for a few months. And there'd be all kinds of stuff to do with them. And I'm like, I need more people to help me. And so finally they did hire somebody to help out and manage the work stay program. So I was like, good, somebody's handling that. And then I was like, you've got all these pickers and all these workers who are just, they're darn good workers. So it's like, why they should be processing coffee. Let me teach them how to process coffee. And then I can get out of here before the sun goes down. I still barely made it out of there before the sun goes down, because I'm one of those people who, if it's not done, I'll get it done, right? If somebody doesn't do it, I'll do it. And the problem is if you do that all the time, people just won't do it. And then because they're like, oh, somebody will do it. And so I was always like, all right, 5:30, I'm going to get the heck out of here because I've been here since 7 a.m. Oh, well, there's tools to put away, and the truck's still out in the field. Let me move that back up here. And, I got to put gas in this thing. And, okay, now I got to grease up the pulping machine because nobody did that. And then, this coffee needs to go in the dryer, and this dryer needs to go, it's baled. And I'm like, where is everybody? Where is everybody out here? And that's when I finally told them I was going to quit again. I put in my official 2-week notice. I wrote it out, spelled it out. They said, okay, as soon as we hire someone to replace you, you can quit. That only took 2 more years. So that only took 2 more years. But being saved, it did help a lot. I mean, it really did. I have poured myself into trying to study. It's only been 4 years, barely. I don't think we're 4 years yet. But it's barely been 4 years. And I have to credit my wife for it. She led me to it. And she has been a solid rock for me in that. Where she with her illness, so my wife has an illness as well now, and it's not the same as what my dad had, but similar. She has, she just can't do as much as she used to be able to do. And again, I've told you guys this before, but I mean, I couldn't keep up with her before. She was one of those people who was just go, 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 go. 24/7. I swear she only needed to sleep like 4 hours a night, and she was just ready and raring to go. I mean, it was like, I get off work, and she was a musician. She was like, I got a show. I'm going to play this show, and then after the show, we got a party, and we're going to play that because there's some people who hired us for that. And then tomorrow night, I don't have any shows, so we're going to go see a show for my friend's band. And she worked a full-time job too. And so now, with her not being able to do all that active stuff, she is constantly reading the word. She is constantly watching different pastors and different preachers and different apologists going through the word. And every time she'd be like, oh, you got to watch this. I mean, she's like the best curator for me of all that stuff. She'll watch 10 videos and then be like, this is the best one. You got to watch this one. And so, I mean, having somebody like her has been amazing for me because she's been able to really sift through there's a lot out there. There really is. And you got to be careful because there's a lot of bad doctrine out there too. And that first church we were going to, we actually switched churches. I forgot to mention that. Sorry, I'm kind of all over the place. But I didn't prepare. The first church we were going to turned out to be a prosperity gospel church. And funny enough, the guy who was running the Bible study, him and his wife, great, really good people, really biblically sound in almost everything. And they kind of downplayed the prosperity stuff a little bit in class, and it was I think it was actually after we watched the American Gospel documentary. I don't know if you had a chance to watch that yet, but yeah, they talk a bit about prosperity gospel stuff in there and what they're like, that's nowhere in the Bible. I don't know where they're getting this from. And we're like, okay, I think we need to find a different church, because when every single sermon includes a little bit about making sure you tithe your 10% because God's going to give it back tenfold. Open up your wallets, open up those checkbooks. We need your money. And so we found a better church. We found a Baptist church. We found a nice little Baptist church who is just getting started. They've been a church as long as we've been saved, practically. Now, a little bit longer than that, but they had just, they were even renting a space run by a real nice family, and just great welcoming people. It was a different atmosphere there, too, because the first church we went to, they were nice, and the pastor and a couple of the staff were really, really engaged with us, but like nobody else was. When we went to this Baptist church, every single person was like, oh, who are you? What's your name? Where do you guys live? Where are you from? They cared about us. They talked to us. They treated our daughter. They actually talked to our daughter, whereas in the other church, I think they completely ignored her practically, except for, go stick her down in Sunday school for all at church, and then she comes back afterwards, and who knows what they were doing. And it was just good to get plugged into some really good, very grounded Christians. And the second we joined their church, the pastor was like, all right, we're running through a new Christians study. And we're at like week 4. So come on, plug in. And by next week, you guys should be all caught up. Like, oh, okay. All right then. So, but it was really good to go through because it was a discipleship class. And it not only did it take you through, it was a discipleship, but also at the same time, it was for new Christians too, because it's teaching you how to disciple someone else as if they were a new Christian. So it worked for both ways. There were people in there who weren't new Christians, who had been there Christians their whole lives, who were trying to learn how to be disciples, and then there was also a couple of other people like us who were fairly new Christians. And it just really helped understand a lot of the important things, right? There's things that people argue about the Bible all the time, right? What does this mean? What's that mean? Is this okay? Is that not okay? And they're missing the point, in my opinion. This is a mystery. Paul even calls it the divine mystery. We understand a lot of it. The only thing we know for sure, though, is the only thing that's important is that Jesus came to save us, and that he died for us, and that as long as we repent of our sins, as long as that really all that means is try to do better every day. If you just try to do better. As long as you pray to God, give up your sins, and I'm not saying you'll never sin again. I mean, that's one thing I think that I thought as a non-Christian, I always had that view of like, oh, Christians, they think they're better than everybody else. That is not true at all. I think we're the only ones who realized we're just as bad as everybody else, and we got to do something about it. And anyway, so this class was really, I really, the Big Island Baptist Church, if you ever go out to the Big Island and you're looking for a church to go visit, look up Big Island Baptist Church and go visit the Baker family up there. Before we left, they got gifted by God in an amazing way. They actually got moved into a new location, a new building that used to be a Christian school, had been abandoned for probably 10 to 20 years, and it's owned by the state. And so they actually have I think it was a 30 or 40-year lease that they got signed for the church to have the property to use. And it's probably 2 acres, 4 buildings, decent-sized chapel area, a bunch of classrooms and stuff. $300 a month. That's all I got to pay. $300 a month. Unbelievable. And it's 2,000 feet above town, overlooking the ocean. So when you're sitting, you come out of church and you're just standing on the little deck that we built out front, and you just see ocean and the town below you and everything, and it's just gorgeous up there. It needs a lot of work still. I mean, I was crawling around running electrical so we could plug in sound and plug in stuff because it just wasn't, it was knob and tube electrical still in this building. But they got blessed with it, and I helped them a little bit, and hopefully they're on their way. And then we decided we had to move because we couldn't afford to live in Hawaii. COVID hit. The coffee farm was they'd already started hiring some people to replace me, but part of my pay was commission based. I got extra money for more coffee I sold, for more coffee clubs we signed up, for more and I even got extra money for anything new that we thought up that the owner hadn't been doing that made money. We actually got a better share of. So we started doing what we call paniolo roasting. You guys are probably like this. Paniolos, that's the Hawaiian cowboys. That's I think it's Portuguese for cowboy is what the paniolo are. Because they have a huge cowboy culture out there in Hawaii. Because they had, you can't get beef anywhere else if you're out there. You grow your own. And there's a lot of unusable land other than for just grazing cows, because it's just too steep, it's too rocky, but tons of hay and grass grows, so cows. Some of these cows out there on the Big Island, they have the best view you've ever seen, right? You could never build a house there, but there's just a field full of cows just sitting there chewing, looking over a cliff, and there's ocean for hundreds of miles. But anyway, this paniolo roasting, so roasting old school cowboy style, because this is something I didn't know either. Up until the early 1920s, coffee's been around for, I think, like 1,000 years, something like that. But everybody roasted your own coffee. Coffee farmers would grow it, and then they would take it and they would roast it just enough so you couldn't plant it. They'd basically kill it so someone couldn't steal their coffee. Because coffee is been traded around the world like gold for a really long time. Even now, it is one of the highest traded commodities in the world. It's like sugar, oil, and coffee. Those are like the three at the top. It's actually, I made the joke all the time. I was like, I gave up dealing one drug and went to dealing another. Just a legal drug, caffeine. I'd even go down to, I'd have somebody be like, I need to buy 100 pounds of coffee bagged up to, ship off to my clients. I'm a lawyer. I'm like, great, we'll get that all ready for you. You want me to run it over to your house? Or, well, I'm in town. Why don't you just meet me at the gas station? So I'm meeting a dude at a gas station to get like a $20,000 check and hand off a bunch of coffee. Like, this is something out of a movie. Anyway, paniolo style roasting is what the old cowboys would do. They would just take their mostly green coffee, throw it in a cast iron pan right over the coals, and just sit there and stir it till it all blackened up, and then you'd crush it up, grind it up, and drink it. That was old school coffee. So we had the idea of setting it up and doing that for guests, tourists who came up to the farm. Roast your own little bit of coffee. Just got a bunch of little cast iron plates. I built a little pavilion for them to do the roasting underneath. Did it all Hawaiian style with like the thatched roof and all that type of stuff, and started that up. And I think we were charging people like $35 per person to roast like a little tiny quarter pound of coffee and put it in a bag. It takes like 20 minutes to do, and you could get like 6 people at a time doing this. And we were getting, I think we got 50% of the profits got split up between the management staff. So it was a pretty good revenue source. But then COVID hit, and all the tourists disappeared. And that farm we would have been dead if it hadn't been for the coffee club that we had started there, right? Everybody's got clubs nowadays, selling coffee everywhere. But I just couldn't make it anymore. So we decided we actually, this is the crazy thing. We were like, okay, maybe we're going to have to move back. I can't do this anymore. And all of a sudden, a guy who I met at the coffee farm, he worked there. He was actually he was the business manager there. He took care of all the finances, all of the business side of stuff. I decided what we were going to do. He figured out how we were going to pay for it. So he had the harder job, in my opinion. But anyway, he had left to go start a business with his family, and he kept bugging me saying, hey man, you got to come up to California. You're a great salesman. I know you could work for our company. They do bathrooms. He's like, you could crush it selling bathrooms. He goes, our top salesman is making like, $125,000 a year selling bathrooms out here in California. And he's like, you could do better than him. I'm like, money sounds good, but I don't want to leave Hawaii for California. And I've done the salesman lifestyle too. That was another job I had in there. And I've always been a good salesman. I've had people tell me I could sell ketchup popsicles to ladies in white gloves. So, yeah. So I'm like, I just couldn't do it though. Also, because there's, nothing against anyone who might be living in California, but it just wasn't my crowd anymore. Maybe 10 years ago I would have been like all about it, but now I was like, no, that's just not where we want to be. And it was like the third time he bugged me because I kept telling him, I got to find a new job. I got to figure something else out. I was ready to go like wait tables or something because you get pretty good tips in Hawaii, but I didn't know I just didn't want to do that either. But finally I said to him, I was like, well, if there's only some way I could do something remote for you, like I'd work for you. I just can't. I'm not moving to California, and I'm not doing the working from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. doing sales, because that's what salesmen have to do if you want to make the big bucks. And he was like, actually, we want to start our own call center, all of the phone stuff that they've been doing, they've been outsourcing to somebody else, and it just doesn't work very good. You know, I mean, we all know when you call somebody on the phone, and you can almost tell if it's the real company you're talking to or you're talking to somebody who's really worked for the company or not. And so he wanted to start his own call center because one of the other companies that, you know, that he was friends with said, yeah, once we started our own, business took off. And so he's like, if you can do this remote, we can do this. So I started working for him, quit the coffee farm, and it was actually right after I quit, the owner was like, we had to hire 3 people to do your job in the end. We had to hire 2 more people to replace you, even though we'd already hired the 1. So he's like, I totally am sorry. He tried to apologize and tried to make it up to me, and I was like, well, it's too late for that, but that's okay. But started working remote, started working from home, which is a huge blessing, especially with my wife's illness, right? Because I got to finally spend some time with them, see them a lot. And then it was right at the tail end of this last year, our landlord said that he's like, okay, first I got to double rent. That's what he told me. He's like, we're going to double the rent because rent's going up everywhere. And I'm like, man, I can't afford that for this piece of junk. I mean, literally, the stove didn't work. We were cooking on a hot plate that sat on top of the stove. I had to replace the hot water heater with my own hot water heater. I had to replace both the washer and dryer with my own. I had to replace the refrigerator with my own because when they broke, and I'd call him up, I'd be like, hey, this thing's broken, it don't work. And he's like, well, I don't got any money, so I don't know what we're gonna do. I'm like, great. So I'm like, I'm not paying you that for this crappy place. I was like, maybe we can work something out. Like, maybe I can do a little work, rebuild the deck. The roof's been leaking for years. Maybe I can fix your roof and we can do some work trade and try to make this more affordable. And finally he was just like, nah, never mind. I'm going to move back. You guys got 60 days to move out. And that was Christmas Eve. He told us that, actually. Or not Christmas. I think it was the day before. It might have been the day before Christmas Eve. He was like, I'll give you till, he actually didn't even give us 2 months. He said, I'll give you till the end of January to get out. So we started looking around, and rents in Hawaii had gone insane. And they already are high, right? I mean, you want to rent, they're like New York prices out there, People rent a 110 square foot bedroom for $500-600 a month, right? You share a house with somebody for $500-600 a month, you get the bedroom, so, and of course we're not doing that with the family. Every place I kept looking at, it either didn't have internet, or we have pets, they wouldn't take pets, or they're like, yeah, $3,500 a month for a 2-bedroom. I'm just like, what the heck? I can't do this. And so it was actually New Year's Eve when we were like, we hadn't been able to find nothing. The church was trying to help us out. Everybody was trying to help us out. We said, we got to move. We got to leave the island. And it took us 3 weeks to find a rental. We did not know where we didn't have a signed contract until a week and a half before we flew out of Hawaii for a place to rent. We were looking all over the place. We were looking in Arizona. We were looking back in Minnesota. We were looking in South Dakota, North Dakota. I kept saying, why don't we move to the Ozarks? Why don't we move to the Ozarks? Actually, one of the Bible podcasts I listened to, the couple lives in the Missouri Ozarks, and they always talk about how beautiful the Ozarks are and how, just cows and porcupines and possums. And I'd been through the Ozarks before. My wife had been through the Ozarks before, and I was much younger. I think it was like 14 the last time I'd come down through the area, and I was like, I remember it being beautiful. I've always loved lakes. I've always loved fishing. I mean, I had 2 boats back in Minnesota when I was in my, partying days, and I was like, let's move to the Missouri Ozarks, and we couldn't find any place in Missouri Ozarks to rent, and it's like, luckily, God helped us out. I don't know how my wife got connected to a real estate agent at Remax, and this lady was like, well, we actually I don't have anything, we don't do a rental program in Missouri, but we got a rental program in Northwest Arkansas where we actually have houses, instead of selling them, we're managing the rents for them, if you're interested. She's like, I'll find you somebody, because we have 3 dogs and a cat, and anybody who knows rentals, that's like, you're done. they're at best, they're like 2, that's your max, 2. And she was like, their policy, some places said 3. That's what we kept saying, like, what, our cat's an outside cat. He's lived outside his whole life in Hawaii. That's where he showed up. He was just one of those, porch cats. He just showed up on our porch one day, and we started feeding him, and he never left. And we're like, the cat will stay outside. We got 3 small dogs. The biggest one's like 20 pounds. I mean, they're little dogs. And she's like, I'll find somebody. And it was like a week later. She's like, I got a guy. He says, it don't matter. He doesn't care how many, as long as you get pet insurance to cover the place. We got you a spot. sight unseen. Over again, we got our plane tickets. I've got a container loaded full of stuff, and I had to call up Matson and be like, all right, so I know I said I was thinking Missouri. Now we're going to Arkansas. They're like, oh, no big deal. We'll just change the destination. No big deal. And we actually had, I know you know some of this crazy story. We had to fly into Arizona because that's all the farther we could go with pets. COVID, all the planes have stopped carrying pets. They're like, oh, COVID, we can't carry pets. I don't know why. I have no clue what the heck that's all about, but they had to. Hawaiian Airlines was the only airline that would allow pets in and out of Hawaii, and they were one of the only ones still doing it, and they had to because it's Hawaii. You can't just be like, well, we'll drive instead. There's no other option. And I don't know if that's changed or not still, right? I mean, they had taken it as an excuse to just stop doing pet transport. But all the farther we could go was Arizona. So we had to sell both of our cars because because of the shipping delays that were going on at the time. We could ship our stuff in, and that was because it was containerized, and Matson had their own port on both ends. They're like, yeah, we can get your stuff to you in about a month and a half, maybe. The car, they said minimum 2 months to get the car, maybe longer. And I was like, renting a car for a month or two, just might as well just buy a new one. So we're like, we sold both our cars. We had to sell both cars, fly to Arizona, buy a car in 24 hours, and then drive to Northwest Arkansas with 4 animals. And so we had to buy a pretty big car. And and I think we had 14 pieces of luggage, right? Because that was everything we needed for the time being. And it was right at the beginning of February this year, which was the worst blizzard that the South had seen in about a decade. And so that's what we drove into Arkansas. The whole way, people were like, it ain't ever been like this. I can't believe you guys are out there on the road. I mean, there was a period we decided to cut through. We went across to Oklahoma. So we stayed in Phoenix, and then we were going to go up to Albuquerque, New Mexico for the second day. And as we're driving towards Albuquerque, my wife's looking at the weather, and it's just blizzarding out, and she's like, we should not go to the mountains. Let's not try to get up to Albuquerque in this. So I was like, okay. So she diverted us some other direction, but what it ended up doing is we were on a county road in a blizzard in the middle of the night. Like, all I could see was just a little bit in front of me, and it was a hair-raising experience driving through this blizzard in the middle of nowhere in the middle of the night. I think there was 2 hours where we didn't see a town, we didn't see a gas station, we didn't see a house, we couldn't see nothing because it was just darkness driving across Oklahoma to get to Tulsa. And I guess that is the Panhandle. I mean, I've never driven it in the daytime, so I don't know, but my wife has. She's actually used to be a long haul trucker back in the day, and she drove across the Panhandle a few times and said, "Yeah, there's nothing to see. You're not missing nothing." But definitely a weird place to be in the middle of the night, I tell you what. And every day it was like we had because of her health, we're like, let's make this trip easy. We'll do 6 hours of driving. We'll get a hotel. We'll take it simple. We don't have to get up early. Every day was 12 hours of driving because it was half the speed, And I, being a little bit stubborn, and I've got for my work, I've got a computer, multiple monitors, all that stuff. I needed it, but I didn't want to ship. I couldn't ship it with me. Couldn't bring it with me on the plane because they wouldn't insure it. Was actually why I shipped it all. And I'm like, it is arriving on this day. We got a bed we ordered that's arriving on this day. That's when we got to be there to get our stuff. I'm like, I'm not going to have a couple $1,000s worth of computer equipment just sitting on my front porch in the middle of a blizzard waiting for us to show up. It's like, that's just a dumb idea. We got to be there. Because she kept saying, we should just stop. We should just wait for it to pass. And I was like, no, we're fine. I got this. And it was our final stretch into Tulsa. She actually made me pull over for a while because there wasn't even a semi truck on the freeway. We were the only vehicle on the freeway. She's like, all the semis got off. You need to get off the road. They know what they're doing. I'm like, okay, fine. So we pulled over at a rest stop and slept for a couple hours to let them plow the road. We got into Tulsa, I think, at 4 a.m. or something like that. And then that was when she finally convinced me. She's like, we're not getting up tomorrow morning and driving into Arkansas. We'll get an extra night here at the hotel. We'll just stay. It'll be okay. And I was like, all right, we're super close. That way, the next day, I was like, we'll get up super early. We'll get in there before the sun, really gets up too high. And actually, the hotel in Tulsa, bless them, God blessed us. The lady was like, well, it's 4 a.m. I'm just going to check you in as if it's already the next day, so you only have to pay for 1 day, you can stay for 2. I'm like, yes, you guys are awesome. So anyway, that was our adventure into Arkansas, where we got here. And we lived in that house for almost another month and a half before our stuff finally showed up. You know, we literally had a bed on the floor. We went and bought a couch. We bought a TV. And then my wife found a foosball table at one of the Salvation Army stores. So that's literally all we had for like 3 weeks: the bed, a couch, a TV, and a foosball table. And we were doing church with our church in Hawaii, because I set up their whole sound system. I set up their whole live streaming system through COVID and all that, and camera system. And I was actually still remotely helping them. I've got it set up so I can get logged into their computer and help them get it all set up, because I taught them how to do it, but they still needed a little more. I didn't have enough time, right? It was all of a sudden like, I'm running your whole show, and then, oh yeah, in a month and a half I'm out. We got to teach somebody else how to do all this. But we were doing church from home for a while, but we kept checking out other churches. We went here, we went there, and there's a lot of nice churches in this area. I'll tell you, that's one thing that is a bit daunting. There are a heck of a lot more churches here than there are in Hawaii. And we just didn't find a home until we visited this one. And when we came to this church, I mean, Daniel, you were the first person to greet us at the door, if I remember right. I think you were the first person. We came in Sunday morning. We actually showed up early to go to Bible study. And you were like, hey, I don't think I've seen you guys before. And we're like, yeah, we're here for the Bible study. And you're like, all right, come on down.
What I really thought was, there's never been a guy in here with a man bun. And so I need to figure out what's going on.
That's probably right. Man bun, wearing sandals and a Hawaiian shirt and a man bun.
That was my thought.
I bet. Like, what the heck is this?
Where's the security team at?
Yeah, right. Where's the
I
security?
need the rest of the security guys. Where you at?
I'm going to put you in the room with me so I can keep an eye on you. But yeah, that was when we found, honestly, you guys are like family now. Yeah. You really are. I mean, and it's not been that long. I mean, we're talking, when was that? I don't even remember. It wasn't that long ago, but.
Oh, man. Was that the start of summer?
It was about the start of summer, I think. It wasn't.
It was warm.
Yeah, it was warm. I don't remember the exact day, but.
So that's anywhere between.
When we started that house.
Yes.
That's
Yep.
right. Yeah.
Yep.
So that was summertime.
That's right. I think it was it was like the very first day I was here. You guys were talking about that next weekend. That's next Saturday. You were going to be tearing up the house over there. And I was like, all right, I can do that. I know I brought my tools with. I was like, I can do this. I'm going to go over there and help them.
Been about June.
Yeah. So that sounds about
June,
right.
About the start of summer, yeah.
Sounds about right. And now my daughter's been baptized here. She that was I still remember that day too, when we asked to join the church, and you guys accepted us. And then as we went up there to kind of just be accepted into the church, Pastor Roger just turns down to Harmony and says, do you want to get baptized? And she literally says yes, and jumps and like throws both her arms in the air. And I was just like, oh, that's the kind of excitement you want to see when you ask.
Awesome.
Because I didn't want to push it on her, right? I wanted it to be real. I didn't want to, because I know this is what happens a lot of times where parents can easily say, oh, you need to get baptized. And that, maybe that'll save you. I don't know. It has to be a heart thing. And I know she's saved for sure, because her reaction, there's no doubt about it, You probably go back and watch it on Facebook. It wasn't that long ago. If you go back onto our Facebook archives, I'm sure you can see her up there just jumping for joy when he asked if you want to get baptized. And that was something amazing. It really was. And then that brings us to today.
Yeah, you kind of got involved, and your first week here, jumped in feet first, and haven't left us yet.
No, I have not. And I know, again, I know that was God calling me to do it,
Yeah.
I remember when I met you, Ray.
Here we go.
What was your first thought?
Well, I remember him in church, but when we really started working together at the house, and so we were working in there. I was kind of in charge of getting everybody in certain spots.
Doing something,
right? And Ray shows up, and I'm like, all right, just go work in there, get that all taken care of. And we were done working. I told Ray, I says, I guess you're in now. You're in.
Yep.
That's all right. You did a day's work. You're in.
You're in. Yep. I remember just being like, okay, what is something nobody's doing? And like it was pulling off all that trim around the bottom of the floor.
Yeah, the baseboard.
Yeah, the baseboard.
Yep.
Yep. And I was like, okay, this is a job everyone else is avoiding, so I'm just going to dive in and do it.
Yeah, you did. Yeah. And then found water leaks.
Yep.
and-
Found the water leaks, and yep. No, I remember. That was a good one. I think it was the next week after that. Randy talked to me for a little bit, and he was like, I think you're going to fit in here.
And you do, Ray. You really
Yeah.
do. I mean,
Yeah.
we're all part of the family now.
Yeah.
And I know Harmony comes over and rides the horses, and I kind of wanted to go back a little bit on your testimony.
Yeah, sure.
Because it kind of sparked a little thing in my head. When you said that you read that book, It's Finished, on how that changed your life.
It is done. Or
It Is Done, or
yeah, I
something
think
like
it's
that?
called It Is Done or It Is Finished. Yep.
So
I still
how
have
did
it.
that change your life? Like, is that when you accepted Jesus Christ as your personal
Oh
Savior?
yeah, for sure, for 100%. That's when it went beyond just being like, okay, I slipped back in, right? Because like at first it felt kind of just like riding a bike again. Because like I said, I grew up in church. I knew church, and so I just was showing up. I was doing things, talking to people, singing the songs, and all of that. But I wasn't, for the first I don't know, probably 2-3 months, I wasn't reading my Bible at home. I don't even know if my wife was doing much study at home. I think it was after we realized that, again, from doing the Bible study and then again from reading this book, that we were like, okay, well, this church isn't fully feeding us, right? They're giving us something, but they're not giving us the true everything. And once I read that It Is Finished book and realized, again, I hate to say it like this, but it's so simple. It is so simple. It boggles my mind that everyone doesn't get it.
It's simple enough a child can understand it, but we make it so complex that adults cannot understand
Yeah,
it.
we do.
Right.
And at the Acts 1:8, we had the bracelets. They handed out all these bracelets. Had arrow up and arrow down and an arrow this way, right? So, God, Jesus left heaven and came down on the earth, right? Then he died on the cross for your sins.
He came, he died, he was buried.
Yeah.
He rose again.
That's it.
That's
Yeah.
it.
That was it. That was it. And it had the little arrows on the bracelet. And you're like, that is how we need to explain it sometimes, because it is that easy.
Yeah.
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 It's that easy.
It is.
Are you saying we make it complicated sometimes?
We do.
We do.
No, we do. But
We
I
add so
agree.
much
I agree.
complexity
Yep.
into our language to
And I think that is a bit of Satan working his way in a little bit. He loves to chip away at the edges. He loves to take like that prosperity gospel church. It's 95% right. It's just that little 5% that's not, and that it warns you about that in the Bible over and over. The leaven.
what is-
you put that little bit of leaven in there,
Yeah.
and it's not like it's just this one bite. Now it's in the whole bread.
well, what does Paul tell us? You got to have childlike faith,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yep, and what it really helped me realize, and I still fail every darn day. You know what I mean? I mean, it helped me realize how my thoughts, my actions, even though I've always considered myself a nice guy. I'm a nice guy. I've never, I've never been in a fight. I've never done anything mean to somebody, but I've lied, I've cheated, I've stealed. I mean, I've disrespected my parents.
Yeah.
It's all happened, right? Like I said, I have broken almost all the commandments. I haven't killed anybody that I know of. But I'm just
so in
saying.
Matthew, it actually says,
Yeah,
you
right?
hate.
Yeah.
You've committed
But even for me though, I mean, probably you as well, is that Holy Spirit convictions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
where it's at. Is
Yep.
when you become saved, you got the Holy Spirit in you.
Yeah. And then it's like all of a sudden the words in the Bible like sort out and shift out. They all of a sudden make more sense.
Right.
Yeah.
Like I've routinely been like, what's that always? I've read this chapter before. I've read through I've probably read the whole Bible twice now in 2 years. I wish I was reading a little bit faster, but I tend to take my time and I read some other stuff and listen to some other stuff too. And life's been kind of busy, but each time I read it, I'm like, I've read this before. And where was that? I didn't see that. I missed that. So this is actually something I just learned the other day. The Bible probably has the oldest your mama joke in it. Yeah, I think it's 2 Kings 9:20.
Oh, I can't wait.
Yeah. You might want to look. Yeah, you
Let
want
me look this up.
Look it up.
because I kind of want to know this.
Yeah, no, it's, and I want to make sure I say it right because I've got it mostly right. But it's right there when it's right during the time of Jezebel and Ahab.
Okay.
And they're at war. I think it's 2 Kings 9:20 if I remember, and it's right during the battle, and it's like, is it, will there be peace, Jehu? And he says, how can there be peace when there's so much whoredom and idolatry from your mother? Something like that. It's pretty close to it. I was like, what? And I didn't find that on my own. Somebody else pointed that out online. I saw it. I was like,
I'm trying to find it.
I might have the verse wrong. I should have wrote it
Yeah.
down, but gosh, I want to look it up now. Maybe I'll take a second and look it up when somebody else is talking. But there's just constant. There was something else the other day too, where I was just reading because again, I'm all of a sudden going to be teaching a class starting Sunday. Let's see how that goes. But I'm reading about the apostles, and I'm reading about. You know what? I also just realized I never knew that Jesus turned over the temple tables twice.
Yeah.
I thought it was just. I just didn't. I realized I'd never read it in that context to understand that those weren't the same story. That he did it at the beginning and he did it at the end, and it was just studying for this apostleship stuff. And MacArthur talked about that. He's like, yeah, this is how he started his ministry, and it's how he ended his ministry is by literally throwing their hypocrisy in their face and being like, you guys are you don't get it. You just don't get it. So every day, every time I read the Bible, it's again when they say it's a living word, like I always took that when I was lost again. I always took that as being, that's how they make the Bible fit, right? That's a cliche that they say so you can make it fit whatever you want to make it say. That's not what it means at all. It means that you could read it today and it means one thing. You could read it tomorrow and all of a sudden you're like, oh, that applies to what's going on today.
That's the work of the Holy Spirit.
100%.
It is.
100% changing,
100%. Yep.
Not just kind of
your understanding,
helping,
your view of it, the context of your life. There's been so many times now since I've been saved where I will study a little part and within 24 hours it's applicable.
Yeah.
I need to say it to somebody. I need, the verse is there all of a sudden, and I'm just like, God's up there. He's right there with you. It's amazing how it works.
Join the text group.
Right.
We get those every day from Derek.
Yeah.
They do. And you know what's funny is that when we send those verses out, it's like, yeah, that's a good one.
That's usually our response back to you. Yeah, that's a good one.
Yep.
What took you so long to send those? No, I'm just kidding.
Right.
Right, that's verse 22
There we go.
of 2 Kings chapter 9, by the way. Verse 22.
The first you mama joke.
The first your mama joke.
Yeah, it was. I laughed really good when I
Yeah.
saw that. I was like, oh, apparently Jehu's mentioned quite often
Yeah.
in that area of the Bible. But yep, where it is. Okay, yeah. When Jehoram saw Jehu, he asked, "Is everything all right, Jehu?" He replied, "How can everything be all right as long as your mother Jezebel promotes idolatry and pagan practices?" That's what the I think the NET Bible says.
Here's what the ESV says. You ready?
It's probably better.
And when Joram saw Jehu, he said, "Is it peace, Jehu?" He answered, "What peace can there be so long as the whorings and the sorceries of your mother Jezebel are so many?"
Yeah, there you go.
Bam.
Yep. I was like, wow, all right. I have to credit that one to the Instagram page called Water from the Temple. They just post Bible memes. Some of them aren't funny. Some of them are real funny.
I've read 2 Kings a lot, and I've never.
Yeah, right?
I read over that.
Yeah, you just go right through it. You're like,
Now
wait a
you
second.
know.
Yep.
No, I know.
Well, it's one of those things. Once you see it, you'll never unsee it.
I wonder if I can preach a sermon on that.
It probably hit well with the youth. I bet it would. So, anyway, yeah, that's.
So, okay, so you read that book, right? Mm-hmm. Did anyone ever? Because I was wondering this. Because I think most of us, when we talk about the moment that we accepted Christ, the moment we realized we needed salvation, did anyone ever talk to you like to lead you to that decision, or was it strictly just you read that book and the Spirit spoke to you?
It was just the book at that point because I was going to that prosperity gospel church.
Yeah.
So they didn't care about salvation. They cared about your check. 100%. Not a single person there asked me, have you been baptized? Have you accepted Christ as your Lord and Savior? And I'm like, yeah.
Sure.
That's all the farther they went. I'm like, yeah, Christ is a cool dude. I mean, even back in the day, I used to make this joke all the time when people would be talking about Jesus, and I'd be like, yeah, Jesus said, be excellent to each other. Oh, wait, that was Bill and Ted, but it's basically the same thing.
I was just wondering. That's kind of cool, though, because, a lot of us, when we talk about it, we're like, oh, yeah, we heard someone say, or someone came to us,
Right.
Someone knocked on our door. But it's just neat to see that that's not always the case.
Yeah.
I've been teaching the students, we have tracks. And I'm like, sometimes you don't have to say anything. Just give them a track,
Mm-hmm.
And let that do the speaking for you. Let the Spirit speak through that.
Yeah.
So that's kind of cool to hear that.
Yeah, it really, that was where, again, it's like it clicked. And I'd like to say that, the next day that, things were brighter and whatever, but I think the next day I had to go work 12 hours at the coffee farm. So, I was right back into life. But when I even had some of the people who worked with me at the coffee farm when I left said that they saw the shift because they were also Christians too. Actually, I worked with a lot of Christians and Catholics up at the coffee farm. It was surprising how many were there, actually. You rarely find that in any job, where I think of the 6 people who were managing the place for the different things we did, there was only one of them who wasn't saved. And well, if you count Catholics as saved, I don't know, but they're close enough. They just got a couple things wrong. But so we'd have some really good discussions after that. This is the part that one of them said to me, is because they were all saved, but they never talked about it. I was always the one who, since I was new, I was on fire. I was constantly talking about it, things I'd learned, things I'd read, but we actually were able to have those conversations. And I think that's why it's important you're not going to find that at work. That's why it's important to be plugged into a church. And it's to not just go to a church, but to get plugged in with some of the people at the church. Yeah. Because I have learned more about my faith. I have grown more in my faith with groups of people than I mean, not to be down against any pastors, but than I have from a single sermon. Right? Sermons will speak to me in ways. Sermons will tell me things, and I definitely learn things from sermons, 100%. Mm-hmm. But I think I have felt more edified. I have felt more growth from, again, interactions in smaller groups or doing things like, the Acts 1:8 stuff. I mean, I wish I could have gone to that. I really wanted to bring my daughter to it because that's where I've found more growth than anything else, Our church in Hawaii did these monthly events that maybe someday we'll try to work up here too, but they actually invited lots of youth that weren't in the church to come up to do fun things. So we built cutting boards one time, got all the different tools you needed to plane the wood and do this and the oil and burn it. And, there's just a bunch of stations. And at the end, all the kids went home with a little cutting board. And the idea was talk a little bit about the Lord, but also teach them how to use a jigsaw, teach them how to use a planer, teach them how to sand, teach them how to do wood burning, right? Derek's already I like wood.
Exotic.
You're right, exotic.
Yeah, Randy says I like exotic wood.
Exotic.
Or for Randy's side of things, I mean, how many kids out there you think know how to change oil right now? Right? How many kids know how to actually change a tire if they needed to? Or how many kids know how to change a bulb in their headlight or their tail light if they need to? I actually saw a little Instagram video where some guy was like, I just pulled up to AutoZone and look what I see. He pans over and he's like, we got the lady from AutoZone helping this dude change his battery in his truck. And then this lady from AutoZone is helping this guy to change his wipers on his truck. And he's like, what's happened to the men around here? You don't know how to change your own wipers. So, I mean, that was one of the things we would do, and one of the ones I missed, right, because we moved, was they actually did a wild game cleaning thing. So they brought up all these kids from 8 to 18 and showed them how to clean and pluck and clean a chicken, how to clean a goat, how to clean a deer, how to clean a fish. Mm-hmm. And
I could teach that all day.
How to clean a pig. And then everybody went home with a little styrofoam cooler loaded up with chicken and pork. And, they took all the meat that they broke down and brought that home. I'm like, man, I need to learn how to do that stuff. I don't know how to do that.
It's deer season.
I know it is. I'm getting ready.
We'll teach you. Don't worry.
I'm going to need to know.
You'll learn. Have you ever been duck hunting?
Nope.
Have any of y'all?
No.
I mean, I was killer at the Nintendo game.
I'm the only duck hunter?
I actually beat Duck Hunt on the Nintendo. So I'm a natural.
And I like duck.
Hey, we're gonna.
I used to try to sneak down to the pond and
Yeah.
get them, but no, that was when I was young.
So we're gonna.
You tried to sneak? That's funny.
It's because he's so short. He barely
I'm
stuck up
short.
above the
He's
grass.
short. So we're gonna have to plan a men's trip then and go duck hunting. I'm gonna have to take y'all duck hunting,
And I think that's a great
and then
thing
I'll
to
teach
do.
you how to clean a duck.
Yeah, and I think we should try to bring our kids with too. Like, I mean,
Yeah,
I'm planning
absolutely.
on bringing
I'm
Harmony
all-
out deer
I'm all
hunting. I
game
know she
for it,
can't
yeah.
hunt, but I got some binoculars for her, so she can be my little spotter, and
I'm all for
just
it.
put her up
Hey,
and be like, hey,
We
just
can
find 'em.
get her to where she can shoot a gun.
Oh
She
yeah,
can go hunt.
she's close.
Be
I think you
all
have to be 10. I think if I was reading it right, maybe I'm wrong, but I think you have to be 10. She's only 8, but
Air
whatever.
quotes.
Air quotes.
It's supposed to be air quotes.
We will, just for anyone listening, we will wait until it's 100% legal, right? Okay.
Yes. Yes. Sorry. Yeah, we will.
And Derek's not
If I
watching.
go.
So yeah, it's amazing, and my, the place we're living in now is so much better than where we were before. People always ask me all the time, I can't believe you moved from Hawaii to Arkansas. Why would you do that?
No doubt.
I'm like, dude, have you ever been to Hawaii? Yeah, and great. It's a great place to vacation. Now stay there for 5 years and
right.
see how much you like it. Because, I mean, everything's fun for a while, but
I was
some
going to
things,
say
So-
that goes for anything, really.
yeah.
Ray, let me ask you this, because we see a lot of times people, especially older, like, when they're already at that adult stage, they've lived their life, they accept Christ, and then they just kind of sit for a little bit. You're different, right? You caught a fire.
He is different.
When he is different.
Yeah, that might be part of it.
But when you accepted
back here.
when you accepted Christ, you had that fire, and you still have that fire 4 years later. And how, explain that? How did that happen? How are you able to keep that going?
I think part of it is because of how low it got for us and how, again, deep into the new age we were. And I believe God is moving right now. People always say that, and it does. It ebbs and flows. But I see him moving right now, because this is something else that was crazy. Right at the same time that we were getting saved, there was actually a couple of social media or media people that we'd watched. One that my wife watched all the time, this lady named Doreen Virtue. She was all new age. She made all her money selling angel books, and she had angel tarot cards, and she talked about God, but she talked about it in a much more new agey sense, in a much more God is your God, and he's going to do things for you, whatever you want. Again, I'm not going to go into all of it, but she transitioned and gave all that up and transitioned into being a Christian at almost the same time we did. Another YouTube star who I still watch, this guy JP Sears, I think he's hilarious. If you go back to his old videos, he's 100% new age, and all he did was make fun of the new age. He was one of those people who always kind of like poking fun at himself. He'd do videos like how to become a vegan, or how to become gluten intolerant, or stuff like that. And his videos are hilarious. And right around the same time we were getting saved, all of a sudden he got saved too. He's now 100% God, and funny enough, he's God and guns. All that now too, but he's all about Second Amendment, and all about respecting God, and being a good family man, and all this other stuff now. And it's like, it can't be just a coincidence that these people who I don't want to say looked up to, but I took in their content. And whenever you're taking in anything, you're taking in a part of it, right? I mean, they warn you about that, and it is true. You have to be careful. I'm not saying you can't watch a non-biblical movie or listen to non-biblical music, but if that's all you do, there is no way it's not slowly moving you the wrong direction, right? You need to balance it, almost 2 to 1. If you're going to do something that's, go out into the world, you need to come back into church and be with godly people twice as much, just to help get you right, in my opinion. It is easy to get pulled off, because sin is so easy. It really is. It's the easy path. It's the safe, it's the comfortable path. And I think one of the other things that's helped keep the fire going is my wife, for sure. She has been a driving force in it. And she has found a lot of peace with what's going on with her in this too. because again, with her health and everything that was going on, and when we were New Age, and it's all that, why aren't we manifesting this? Why are we making less money? Is she sicker? Why are we fighting all the time? Why is nothing going right when we're doing all the things you're supposed to do? We're burning all the right candles, and we're doing the ayahuasca ceremonies and all that crazy stuff, and there was a lot of turmoil in her about that, because it was, again, this is where she's at now. It's almost like she's trapped in her body, right? Her mind is the same person she was before, but her body is not the same body that she had before. And there was, I know that was part of why we were going through such issues too, because she was in a lonely place, being sick and being alone and being, just constantly struggling and not understanding what's going on. And I'm not saying she's not happy about it now. She's, I've heard a few things Pastor Rogers talked about, when some of the most powerful stuff he's seen is when someone's, dying of cancer and they're still thanking God for it. And I try to remind myself every day to just thank the Lord for what I do have in my life. If he hadn't made her sick, I would not be here. I tell you that right now. If he had not made her sick, we would still be in the New Age, still be doing all the stuff we were doing all the, all of it. I'd still be drinking. I'd still be doing drugs. I don't even know if I'd be married to my wife anymore. Probably wouldn't have been. We probably would have split up because, I was in that whole, whatever. That's what everybody does. Everybody's getting divorced nowadays. I'll be a single dad and see my daughter half the time and whatever. It'll be just fine. That's the dumbest thing in the world to say. It is so, I couldn't even imagine not seeing my daughter every day. I couldn't imagine not waking her up every morning and putting her to bed every night. That's what I get to do now, and I can thank the Lord for that. And this is something else I actually, when I was in one of Roger's Bible studies, they were talking about how I have been shocked by how I've heard some of these people who've been Christians their entire lives, 60, 70, 80 years, and they doubt themselves so much as to whether they're good or they're saved or not. And I'm like, it's so easy. What are you talking about? Like, I get maybe I get it because it's been so long and they keep falling into sin here or there, and that's what's going to happen because we are infallible. I mean, Paul says it, I am the chief sinner. I constantly do what I do not want to do, and I don't do what I want to do. And that's Paul. And I don't even think any of us are anywhere close to as good as he was. So, I mean, we just got to understand. Every morning, my thoughts are, okay, I hope it was a little better. I hope it was a little better than the day before, and I hope today I can be a little better than I was the last day, and just keep helping me grow, keep helping me understand more, and let me help others. That's what I really want to do. I think there's a reason for all of it. I actually said this to my wife. I think there's a reason why we went through what we went through. Mm-hmm. Because now, if I run into somebody who is New Age, I can talk to them. I know what they think, I know what they believe, and I know how to approach them. Just like you were saying, cowboy church, just whatever it might be. I mean, I could, if I can be a witness to somebody, I can talk to them in a way that someone else couldn't, right? If you went to somebody who is a hippie New Ager and you're a cowboy, you try to tell them about God, again, just like you said, they're not going to listen. But if I can show up in my sandals and my long hair and man bun.
But when you say all that, you can see God's perfect plan.
Yeah.
That's what I.
Well, and it's like last night in youth we talked about David and Goliath, and what I took away. We know that story. We've heard it our whole lives, most of us, but I took it from a different approach. I took it from the approach that God prepares your way, even when you don't see it. And if you read that story, and we oftentimes look over this one little spot in the story, and David says, I know I can take Goliath, paraphrasing, of course, because I've killed lions and bears. Right? When the lion or the bear took the lamb, he went after, took the lamb back. When the lion and the bear roared up, he grabbed him by his beard or by his mane, whatever, and killed him. And I said, that was God preparing him for the battle that he was about to face with Goliath.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it's these little things
Mm-hmm.
that prepare us for what we're going to do. We don't see what God's called us to in the future, right? We don't see where God's leading us. But we know when we get there, we can go back to these past experiences that have prepared us for that.
100%. Yep. And it's, and I don't mean to take that to say that there's like God, it's predestined, right? I've definitely said God knows where A and B is. He knows where you're starting. He knows where he's going to finish with you. Whatever you do in the middle, you can go all over the place. But as long as you keep God in your heart, you're going to end up right where he wanted you to, or as long as you come back to God like we did.
And he's got a will for you.
Yeah, he
You know,
does.
I mean,
And I had a really good sermon that one of the pastors at my other church taught, and I can't remember the whole thing, but he kept talking about how, and other people have talked about this. There's doors, right? You choose to go through this door or that door. And there's always the left door and the right door, right? And the left door is always moving away from God, and the right door is always moving back towards God. And he went through this whole thing talking about, you make this decision, you went through the left door. You make this decision, you went to the left door. And then you got to then you got to keep going through the right doors to get back. And afterwards, I was talking to him, and I said, it's like, I get what you're saying. It's like, but there's only one part that I kind of disagree with, and is the fact that no matter how many left doors you take, it's just one right door right there next
always
to you.
just one.
You don't have to it's not a long journey back to God. You could go way off and then just open one door, and he's still right there for you. And that's how I feel like it was in my life too. I had turned and gone so far off, and then all of a sudden just turned around and was like, oh, there's another door. Yeah. It's right here.
One thing I'm drawing from your testimony here is you look back into the Bible where a lot of people were worshiping false gods and this and that. You're talking about, your new age, and you was doing this and doing that, and why can't I do that? It's just funny how you just sit here and think back in the Bible times whenever people finally had enough, they said, all right, let your God do it. And it instant. Every time. Instant.
Yep.
And it's just amazing how you can just think of stuff like that. I tried everything else, but then finally you ask God, and it's done.
Yeah.
And that's how, like you said, that's how easy it is. You just sit here and ask God. You put your hope and faith in something else, and you doubt yourself, and you get to a point, and it's finally just, all right, why don't you try God and see how this goes,
Right. And it's not like you turn around and all of a sudden you got tons of money in your bank account,
No,
and all of a sudden everything's better,
No.
but you have a peace.
A peace of mind.
You have you know that you're okay, that you're going to be okay. And that, and this is also something that I truly believe in. I mean, we believe we were under spiritual attack out in Hawaii. It's a very spiritually dark place. There's a lot of gods out there, small g gods, right? I'm definitely one of those Christians who I do believe the small g gods are real, because there's no reason that God would need to fight with them or wrestle with them or denounce them if they weren't real. There are powers and principalities out there that are constantly battling for us. These people who say that they speak to angels, or they speak to this or that, or they've got a spirit guide or whatever, I don't think they're crazy. I think they're talking to the fallen realm. I think they are being misled, being misguided, and taken down the wrong path. Because that's if you open yourself up to that, if you don't have the protection, the holy armor of God on, you are wide open to those attacks. And then the second you bring Jesus to your side, the second you put on that armor of God, they can't touch you anymore. They can't touch you at all. And it's one of those things that's what I think is not, personally, it is not taught enough to the young people, is that it's not just other people you need to worry about. It's the powers that are working through those other people. And they know your weaknesses. They know what's going to work against you every time. They know how to get you. So if you don't put on your armor, if you don't get yourself ready, they will win every time. And it's a battle out there every day. And this podcast, that's our fight back against it. Hopefully somebody somewhere will listen to this someday, and it'll change their mind.
I think I want if we're done here, I want to leave with a quote.
Go ahead, quote man.
Quote. This one stems back from, I think, about every podcast we sit here and talk about how we're all here together, friendship, fellowship, brotherhood, whatever you want to call it. And I really like this one because Derek keeps poking and prodding this situation here. But success is not created by one person, but a team of people that works together. I like that because I don't think either one of us can do this on our own. It takes all of us to do this, let alone our men's group. Whatever we do, it takes all of us. It takes a team.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely.
Well, Ray, appreciate that, man.
Yeah. Thanks for listening.
good
I hope I didn't ramble too much.
It's good. Thank y'all for listening to Spiritual Debriefing.
Sure. You want me to close this in
Yeah,
prayer?
yeah, Ray, if you don't mind.
I don't mind at all. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for bringing us together tonight. Thank you for bringing all those people who are listening to this now and in the future. We ask you to just constantly guide our thoughts, our words, and our actions. Let the Holy Spirit work through us, and let us be that light to others, and let us be the salt to others, and help us to just reach your plan for us. We know that you have so many amazing things we can accomplish in this life, and that they're all possible through you, and all we have to do is get out of the way and keep moving forward. So just guide our steps, guide our actions, guide our thoughts and our words, and just keep us safe as we do your will on this earth. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Thank you for listening to Spiritual Debriefing, a podcast supported by First Baptist Church Hiwassee. Please like and subscribe to the podcast so you can be notified when we post new episodes, as well as check out our past episodes. We'll be posting new podcasts every other Thursday. You can follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. If you have questions you'd like us to answer, comments, or feedback on the podcast, please contact us through our social media or email us at dmeadows@fbchiwassee.com. Thank you, and we hope God blesses your day.